Good morning and welcome to the media briefing on the MCPS framework for return to in-person instruction. I'm happy to be here with you today so that we can talk with our press partners about our plans moving forward to ensure a safe and eventual return to in-person learning for our students in Montgomery County Public Schools. We're going to have some remarks from Board President Shepard Evans and from Dr. Smith, Superintendent of Schools, and then we're going to open it up to some question and answer. So with that, I will turn it over to Board President Shepard Evans.
Thank you. Good morning to everyone. So great to see you all here. Just wanted to share a little bit of information about the work that's continuing to go on here in Montgomery County Public Schools. On November the 10th, 2020, the Board of Education tentatively approved the Montgomery County Public Schools framework for return to in-person student learning. The board is very committed to make certain that as our students and staff are returning, that we're doing so safely and that we're definitely keeping them in mind as we come back to schools. We will definitely make a final vote on December the 3rd, 2020, and in January 7th of 2021, the board will begin its meetings in person. We will do a phased-in approach to our public comments, so stay tuned for that. Just wanted to say that over the past 8 months, it has really been a tremendous change for not only our local community, but across the state and across the nation. Essentially, everyone has had to reimagine how they're operating. And so I just want to take this time publicly to thank our MCPS staff. They have done a tremendous job in making certain the systems that we put in place and the processes are working in favor and the support of our students. So at this time, I will turn it over to Dr. Smith.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. As Ms. Evans just mentioned, it's been 8 months. In fact, it was 8 months ago today, March 16th, that was the first day that our facilities were closed for students and for our staff. And it has been an unbelievable time, as we can all understand. Also, as Ms. Evans mentioned, the board tentatively approved a proposed return plan, which would begin in January with students in specific special education programs and career technology programs, and then transition to other student groups starting February 1st. These plans are all contingent on meeting key health metrics. We've developed these health metric dashboard. We've developed a health metrics dashboard for a safe, phased-in return to in-person instruction. And Mr. Turner is going to walk us through the details of that dashboard with you in just a few minutes. On November 11th, parents were provided a survey through email to identify their preference to either participate in a partial combination in-person instruction experience and virtual learning experience, that combination of those two, or to remain in fully virtual learning experience through second semester. And parents have until December 3rd to provide their choice. We understand this is an incredibly difficult decision to make, and there are a tremendous number of unknowns. In fact, there have been a tremendous number of unknowns virtually every day since the governor stood up on March 12th and said the state's going to go into a closure. And then again on March 30th, he said, now everyone needs to go home now. And we all remember what it felt like to literally be in our homes for days on end back at the end of March and through much of April of last year. So we're asking parents to make this selection now because the number of students who want to return to in-person instruction or a shared combination model will help inform the design of the in-person instructional model, the number of school buildings that we can open, and how we'll schedule all of that. So the information, as we gain it, will help us make decisions. That's so important that we all understand that. I want to be clear that an exclusively virtual learning option will be available for families who do not wish to return to in-person learning for the various factors in their lives, and they will have that choice. None of us have ever lived through anything like this before. We continue to talk and collaborate with neighboring school districts, as well as large school districts across this country, and with colleagues across the state and nation about how to handle the challenges of reopening schools. We do know that the virtual model will be in place moving forward. We know that we will continue to provide virtual services even as we bring students back into school buildings. It's important to think about the concept that all of us hold in our heads. The idea that we'll have to provide virtual learning platforms for many of our students, as well as in-person experiences for students, that may be a combination of some sort of model that uses the two systems. I want to stress that we can only move forward with our plans if health metrics are met. We've heard from many members of the community who want us to begin providing in-person learning in December. We've heard from other members of the community who want us to keep everyone on virtual through the rest of the year. We have to have information from our families. We have to have information about our health metrics. We have to continue to gather information every day. As you know, the most recent information across our state is that there's a very high dangerous level of community transmission of cases in our county and across the state right now. That number of cases is rapidly rising. The current numbers do not support a return to in-person instruction for students or student groups at this time. So we're going to continue to collaborate with our county health officer and other county leaders. We'll continue to look at the metrics. And as Ms. Evans said, we will come back on December 3rd and make a recommendation to the board about returning to in-person learning based on what we know at that time. And then we'll keep coming back to that over and over. If we can come back in January, we will. They understand that we all have a shared sense of urgency. Our county health department, our state health department, we talk to them weekly. Our elected officials, the school board members share the urgency that we as a staff have and that you as parents have. So we're getting a lot of guidance and a lot of information from the state health officials, the governor's office, the state superintendent and state board. All of this information will help us make the best decisions possible given the many unknowns in this situation. Virtual learning has been a very challenging circumstance for many students and families. It's absolutely critical that we get students back into schools and working with our staff in school buildings so that we can provide the instruction, support, and services students need. We're committed to doing so in a safe and reasonable manner. COVID-19 is with us and will be with us for the foreseeable future, and we must continue to rethink and reimagine how we operate as a school system to meet the needs of our students. And finally, I want to say a very sincere and genuine and heartfelt thank you to our staff. I know this is a tremendous struggle for all of you as you try to balance the needs of students, their well-being, their academic progress, their need for records, their need to withdraw, their need to register to come into the school system, their need for food, their need for connectivity and technology, so many needs. And you're trying to balance all of those needs as well as your own difficult circumstances in your life. So to the Montgomery County Public Schools, I want to say a very, very sincere thank you for all you're doing as the staff of this school system. And you are amazing, and I appreciate you. So now I'll turn it back over to Mr. Turner, and he will talk us through the dashboard and some of the other factors that we're looking at as we go forward.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. And if we can pull up the data dashboard. As you know, to get to an eventual return to in-person instruction, we need to understand where we fit in the context of our health and our community. And so we have a live data dashboard that is available on the MCPS website that you can find at the top of the MCPS webpage right now. And with this information, you can really understand where the trends are in terms of our county. And what you'll see is both the CDC calculation of the metrics and the Maryland calculation of the metrics. In both scenarios, we are significantly over the threshold of 15 cases per 100,000 for the kind of the state and the CDC guidelines for return, or what it calculates out to roughly 209 cases in the case rate in the CDC model. Again, we are slightly below the threshold for the positivity rate. But again, that number is continuing to trend up. So we're watching that closely. And as well as the information around staff positive cases and staff who are in quarantine. Again, this information is available on the MCPS website and is updated daily. So please check this this dashboard for the most current information. You'll also find our return to in-person instruction health metrics matrix on this page, where you can see what the numbers are in relative context to the data dashboard. So with that, I'll turn it over to the media for our first question. So I'm looking for hands raised or something in chat. So I see Caitlin Peets, you're up first.
Good morning. Thank you for your time. I have a two-part question actually here for Dr. Smith. First, I know MCPS has been receiving some criticism and some pushback from families who say that the metrics that you have set for reopening are too strict and unattainable. The metrics are a little bit stricter than a lot of the neighboring jurisdictions. So I'm hoping that you can elaborate for us how MCPS got to those metrics and why you feel that they are necessary beyond simply, that the metrics were made in consultation with health officials. Can we just go a little bit deeper into that? And then the second question, I can back to the summer when MCPS was planning for a reopening in the fall, there was a lot of pushback from teachers and families who felt that that plan was not adequate precautions. Enough. And so I'm curious, what did you learn from that and how will you take that and put it to use moving forward?
So I'll address the second part of your question first, and that is a lot of pushback about not reopening. And I think what we knew in the summer as residents of this county and this state and this country and this world is different than what we know now. And at the same time, we always have people share their perceptions, their opinions, their ideas, and people have very different views of this. Not everyone agrees with me or you or anyone else. And so we look at all of that information that we get, and that informs our way of thinking about all of this. But no one piece of information or no one perspective informs everything we do. So we look at all of it as part of a set of information that helps inform us go forward. And so that's critically important. And I receive hundreds of emails all the time, as do all the board members, as do other staff members. And so it's not about who sends the most emails or which perspective gets the most attention. It's trying to look at all of it. In working with our health professionals, you want us to go a little deeper, but the fact is the governor put out a positivity rate and he put out a new cases per 100,000 rate on August 27th. That is the foundation for what the state health department and what the county health department has done. The CDC has put out very similar numbers. And so as we look at that, we use that information and our weekly conversations with the Maryland Department of Health and with the county health officers to make decisions. We also talk with colleagues and school systems across the state weekly and across the nation on a regular basis to look at how decisions are being made, what best practices are, what's happening. And, I point to the fact that several school systems have now that tried to use somewhat lower metrics have now had to close across the nation. And that disruption is very, very difficult for families, staff, and especially for our students. So we're trying to do all of this as we think about what's best for our students, what's best for our community, and what's best for our staff. And that is no easy challenge. And no one's life right now is easy given this circumstance.
Can I just ask the quick follow-up to that, just a clarification? It kind of sounds like you're alluding to that you want to avoid reopening and then having to shut back down again. Is that fair?
Reopening and shutting the system back and forth? Absolutely.
Right. Okay.
That is not good for anyone. Now, once we do open, we may well have to open and close schools, but that's a different question based on outbreaks. And that's a pretty complicated set of information that is evolving every day and every hour as we work through this.
Thank you. We have Aisha from Fox 5 up next.
Hi, good morning. My question is, when the vaccines are approved and they are available, will it be mandatory for students, teachers, and staff to be vaccinated before they return to school?
So we've had extensive conversations with the Maryland State Department of Health Deputy Secretary of Health, Dr. Chan, with Dr. Salmon, the state superintendent, and we have had conversations with our staff here and with Dr. Gales and Dr. Stoddard. Vaccinations have in the realm of school, have been a state set of requirements. The state sets those requirements. So we've asked all the same questions that you just asked, and we're going to continue to ask those questions at the state level. And then the board and county will work with the state to think about what that might look like in the future. But that is work that needs to be done right now. And as one of the 24 superintendents, as well as the 24 boards of education, we've all been pushing with the State Board of Education and all of our elected officials that these decisions need to be formulated right now. And so that's what I know at this point. There's been a lot of conversation about it, but we're going to keep pushing for at least initial decisions and initial plans around what a vaccine set of requirements might look like, because we have a lot of those requirements in place now, just not for COVID-19, for other kinds of vaccinations.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. And the media reporters can now turn on their cameras if they'd like and raise their hand. Again, we'll take questions, so please indicate if you have a question.
Hi there, Randy Bass with WDVM. How are you all this morning?
Good morning.
Just a quick question for you, Dr. Smith, and I'll open this up to Dr. McKnight as well. If our current situation, numbers, metrics stays the same or worsens by the time January rolls around, would you feel comfortable sending students back to school in an environment similar to what we have now?
We'll have to look at all of that as we go forward into early December and make decisions about what second semester would look like. And of course, bringing small populations of students in January would have to be evaluated also, given where our metrics are now. Dr. McKnight?
Thank you, Dr. Smith. Yes, we are continuously thinking about our phase and model for the purpose that you mentioned. What we've learned about management of COVID-19 is, we don't know how quickly the spread is, who it's impacting, how it's impacting our community. And so one of the commitments we made up front about having a phase-in approach was to be able to say, what is the best way to serve our students, and how can we phase them in smaller groups in case we need to have those things in mind and thinking about management of COVID-19 so that we're not putting more students at risk than appropriate at the time. We're going to continue to work with our county officials. We meet very often just to look at the virus and how things are occurring in our community. And so we'll continue to do that so that we are working with them alongside the way to think about what is best for the school system based on how the metrics are going in the county.
Thank you, Dr. McKnight. I see another question from Caitlin Peets.
Hi again. Dr. Smith, can you just explain under what circumstances then would staff be allowed to opt out of in-person learning? Is it just strictly based on what is legally allowed, or are you allowing any flexibility based on preference? What will that look like?
So we have put together a place digitally where staff could go and share information with us, and it will be handled very individually. And of course, all of the different legal and codified requirements will be the foundation for all of that. Remember though, the ratio of students to staff will be determined by the number of students who come back. One school system I spoke with recently actually had more staff that wanted to return to a facility than students. So we will work through all of that as we know the ratio of students and staff. And we also know we're going to have to add staff to do any sort of combination in person and virtual learning. It's going to be absolutely necessary. And so we're in the process of doing that right now also.
What kind of information are you asking the staff to share with you to make those decisions?
Well, they have the opportunity to share any health or related information as well as anything else they want to share. And that's not just because of COVID. Staff always share information. You know, that's way before COVID, and they will continue to share information, and we will continue to listen and work with them.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. Do we have a question from our student reporter?
Yeah, I do actually have 3 questions. So my first question was, so the phase-in model was changed to have juniors and seniors coming back to school before sophomores and freshmen. Can you talk about why that change was made?
Dr. McKnight and Dr. Wilson, do you want to talk about how your team looked at that feedback that we received and how you put that together, just so they can hear some other voices besides mine? And you guys did the work.
Sure, and I'll let Dr. Wilson come in just a moment. But as we thought about our priority students and how we would phase in within the different phases during COVID-19, we pulled together a multi-stakeholder group so that we would have the perspective of all our teachers, our students, community members, so that they could all be a part of understanding how we would form those priorities. And we took a number of things into consideration. One consideration was thinking about the needs of the students, and a part of that also was looking at how our students are thriving or not in the virtual environment and how we would support their learning and who needed what at the time. So Dr. Wilson, I'll let you add in any particulars around changes.
Good morning. Certainly, we believe strongly that we want all of our students to have an in-person experience. And given the fact that we have to stage our students into the building so that we're making sure that we're staying within the health and safety guidelines, we've had a considerable amount of discussion around who should we bring in first. Knowing full well that our students in grades 6 and 9 have made transitions into new levels of instruction, and they have new teachers. We did pose that first, but then after some feedback and some further consideration, and quite frankly, beginning to look at our first quarter grade analysis, we decided that we would adjust and bring in our seniors and our juniors first. And we're going to be looking at that first through the lens of who's on track to graduate. And we want to make sure that we are doing that credit analysis and using our graduation validation teams to make sure that we are targeting the right students. Also, we know very well that certainly our seniors for the class of 2020, did not have those typical senior experiences. And so with the right conditions, we want to begin to phase those students in so that they can have the opportunity to celebrate many of the aspects that our senior classes do across our 25 high schools. So this will be ongoing consideration. We're continuing to take feedback, but in the large part, we're using metrics to guide those decisions. And certainly also that component of the social emotional that Dr. Smith and Dr. McKnight raised earlier, critically important to our decision making.
Thank you. So as like a quick follow-up, I actually am a senior, so I do appreciate your attention to how kind of sad a lot of this has been for my class. But I know that some schools have unusually high fail rates for freshmen especially. So are there extra precautions you all are taking to kind of give freshmen more academic support?
That's a great question. We are right now examining the possibility of adding some additional supports to all of our students, quite frankly, who we find did not get off to a great start for the first 9 weeks in this virtual space. So we are planning a Saturday school opportunity. Now it'll still be a virtual opportunity. We would love for that at some point, to be face-to-face. We're not there yet. But once those first quarter grades are posted, we will be standing up opportunities for our students who are struggled during that first 9 weeks. Great question.
Thank you.
So next up, we have another question from Randy Bass.
Thank you for taking my question. Over the summer, a big topic of discussion was gauging loss of learning from March to June. And now as we enter the 8th month of virtual learning and learning from home, how is MCPS continuing to gauge, potential loss of learning and other impacts on students brought on by this virtual format?
That certainly is one of our biggest concerns, and it really comes down to the well-being and the academic progress of our students. And I know that many of our staff members feel tremendous tension as they try to support the well-being of students and they worry about the academic progress. Remember, all of us know this, but let's keep it in mind in the front of our head every day, that your sense of well-being directly affects your ability to make academic progress. So we have to really strive to connect with students, to support families on how best to support children in these circumstances. And so we did some initial measures. It was a state requirement, but we also wanted to know what was happening in first marking period and we used the MAP test in elementary, middle, and high school for students. We also are looking, as Dr. Wilson just said, at student grades. We're also looking at class reports. What are teachers talking with their school staff members about and their well-being and academic support teams in the school? And it really is very much becoming an individual issue as we think about it. And we want to continue to use all of the resources we have to do the things that Dr. Wilson was just describing, whether they're enrichment, whether they're support because a student has fallen behind in their reading, and then knowing where each student is and making sure they're connected and engaged with us. And so we're putting all of our resources toward that. We're putting all of our effort toward that at this time. And it's quite a challenge to do that. But that is our most important focus for our students across the school system, is continuing to make sure they're making academic progress in a circumstance of tremendous physical, social, and psychological well-being support, because that has to come first. And that has to happen for students if they're going to make academic progress.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. We have a question from Donna St. George from the Washington Post.
Hi, Dr. Smith.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
And hi to everyone else. I had a question. I wanted to follow up on the grade analysis that Dr. Wilson mentioned. Mm-hmm. Could you speak more about what you found about first marking period, the number of students who are failing or seriously struggling? What did that analysis find? So we're in the middle of the analysis on grades right now because first marking period just ended. We found with the administration of the MAP that there were larger disparities for different student populations and different students. And we were able to do grade over grade. So we compared last year's fourth grade to this year in some cases. In other cases, we were able to look at cohorts of students. So how did you do in the 6th grade versus the 7th grade? And so we're using all of that information and sharing it back with the schools so that they can individually meet the needs of students, sharing it with the teachers, the teacher leaders, the paraprofessionals, the principals, so they can use that information. Dr. Wilson, you want to share any more about what that showed? We also have all of that, Donna, that we can send you from our last board meeting. So you could look at it was the October 27th board meeting, I think. We can send you that set of data so you would have it. Yeah, I watched that meeting.
Dr. Wilson?
Sure. Yes, Donna, we are currently, the marking period just closed. So we're doing that analysis right now to look at impact by grade level. And especially at the high school, we're looking at that whole on track to graduate piece, both in terms of the courses taken and also the credits, because we know, for instance, for exiting freshmen at the end of this year, we'll want them to be on track to graduate. So we have to do a deep analysis, and it is definitely a student by student view. And we will be presenting some of the findings of that in our December 3rd board presentation. So we'll be doing the analysis by specific grade levels. The plan right now is 6, 9, and 12, just because of time, to do those transition grades and to make sure that our seniors, are pacing along. And if they're not, so that we can provide those necessary supports to them.
Okay. I'd like to ask another question, if it's okay. The state had once required MCPS to reconsider its plans for in-person learning by the end of the first quarter. Is the plan that you had, preliminarily adopted last week, is that the decision you give to the state in answer to that request?
Yes, that is. And we also have to share other metrics and information. It's due on the 23rd of November, I think, to the state. So we're formulating all of that right now.
Okay. And Dr. Salmon really focused on MCPS and several other school systems a couple of weeks ago, saying that they should reopen, that they sort of had, they could safely reopen. I know I touched base with you back then, but do you still feel that pressure from the state to reopen, or has that subsided now?
Well, there's a lot of pressure from many different directions. As I said earlier, lots of people have different perspectives and different views. We try to take all of that information, especially the health information from the state and the local health officers and the local elected officials at the county government level, all of that information, as well as all the things Dr. Wilson just shared, and continually try to balance that out. What's the best decision? And so we'll just continue to work with all of that information and try to be as balanced and thoughtful as possible with what we know to go forward. Certainly a month ago, the metrics were very different than they are today. And so a month ago's view should be different than today's view, and how that all works, and it changes every day.
Do you consider your health metrics more strict than other school systems?
The foundation of our health metrics is the state positivity rate of 5% and the state new case rate per 100,000 population of under 5 or 5 to 15 or above 15. And we can also share all of that. That's the foundation of our metrics. And we also look at the CDC and the actual just raw number of cases. That's all on our dashboard. So we look at all of that in alignment and think about what does it mean for our school system and our students and families.
So let me pivot back to, we have another question from Caitlin Peets.
Hello again. I'm just going to pivot to a different topic for a second. The County Council has proposed legislation to remove school resource officers or prohibit MCPS from having school resource officers. I know there are a lot of opinions on this from all sides, notably principals who your staff have said unanimously support keeping school resource officers. I'm curious, as the leader of the school district, what your opinion on this legislation is and on the school resource officer program as a whole.
So I don't really have an opinion about the legislation. That's the county government's venue. I really don't. In terms of the school system as a whole, I've heard many, many different voices on this topic: community residents, students, principals, teachers, families, and we take all of that into account. Most importantly, right now, the board has a resolution that has directed me to ensure that we're doing a study on the use of school resource officers and potentially any changes that we would recommend in the program if the program continues to go forward. And those are all questions that we'll continue to respond to in January. The board saw a lot of information in early October and reacted to it. Now they're going to get a lot more information in January, and then we'll continue to advise them and support them as we see that information develop and as we see what those external forces like the county council what decisions they make. There's a state law there that also that sits out there around this issue. So lots of complicating factors, very complex issue.
Do you feel like the school resource officer program has been beneficial for MCPS?
Yes, I think there have been lots of benefits, and there have been lots of reported causes for concern. And that's why we're having this conversation, is because of that balance of things. You know, most complex things in the world, it's because there are lots of factors that are involved. And this is a complex question and one that deserves our attention, and we'll move forward, and people have their own opinions and perspectives on it, and they share those.
Next question is from Annika.
Hi again. So at the last board meeting, Dr. Smith, you talked a little bit about still trying to work on this all virtual model, especially for students who are high risk. So in addition to this idea of like Saturday school or something, what are your priorities for trying to make the virtual model more effective?
Well, we're going to continue to build out the all virtual model, because I think it's with us forever, for the foreseeable future. I really do. I mean, what school will look like in the future, I don't know. I've been involved in schools for 41 years, so I know what they used to look like and what they look like now. What will they look like 10 years from now? I don't know, or 20 years. But I do think that a virtual option has been growing across the nation and across the state. In Maryland, a little more slowly than other states, some other states, until now. And so Maryland actually has had to do some catching up, if you will, around virtual. But some of the examples would be is the question of, do I want to ride a bus to get to this special program that I want to go to, or drive myself in the case of some seniors, or do I want to just join virtually? That's a change that it could create. It also could create the opportunity to use different schedules, because we are on the same school calendar that's been used for a few hundred years in this country. And it was specifically built around the growing season for agriculture and farming. And so it could change the school calendar. It could make a lot of differences in how we use staff and social programs and things that, you know, small numbers of students want to study, and we can't offer it all 25 high schools or all 40 middle schools, but we could offer it virtually. So lots of possibilities here and lots of opportunities. And certainly for students with health risks or their families would be foundational to this, but it also could involve lots of preferences and choices by families based on their circumstances.
Thank you. You did mention a little bit about busing as well. So that was like a big topic at the last board meeting. If different zip codes are safer than other zip codes, there might be some level of like discrepancy or difference among different schools. So is that going to be something that's done by cluster or by zip code? And then for students who do bus across the county for things like magnet programs, how would stuff like that change?
Well, once again, that will be an issue of the ratio of students and families who choose a combination virtual and in-person versus the number who choose an all virtual. And, you know, we pay attention to the case rates across zip codes. And then we have to ask the question, does that change the relative risk in a school? And that's an interesting question, and one that lots and lots of school systems across the state and nation are studying right now and trying to make a determination about. And we'll use all that information as it becomes clear and available for now. And, you know, what we know now versus what we knew 8 months ago today when you were a junior and you had your first day out of school is very different. And what we know 3 and 5 and 12 months from now will be different yet again. So we'll use all of it to make the best decisions possible.
Thank you.
Last question goes to Caitlin Peets.
Hi again. So you mentioned that, and you've mentioned it before, that MCPS to do a hybrid model will need to hire more staff. I'm curious, you know, where that additional staff would come from, the substitute pool, or where you plan to find those extra staff, and is there any kind of incentives that you will put in place either to get more staff to come to MCPS or to get staff you already have to want to continue with the hybrid teaching model?
We'll work directly with our 3 associations and our school board around incentives, and that's a specific conversation that we want and need to have with them, and we're required by law to have with them. In terms of attracting and recruiting staff, we'll use the substitute pool of individuals. We'll use our support professional pool of individuals. If we want to hire more teachers, we'll use our teaching ranks if we need to hire more administrators, and we'll use the general population. You know, Montgomery County has almost 1.1 million residents. It's 1,050,000 or 60,000. And there are a tremendous number of people here with not only high degrees of education and would meet the certification requirements, but teaching backgrounds, our retirees. And many people, are interested in working in various ways. And we are working to, right now, recruit them and talk to them and make sure they're lined up to do this work as we need them. And we've been adding some staff already to support our students who are in the all virtual platform right now, because that also requires more staff to connect with our students individually and to reach out when they're struggling or to provide them additional services. So every area of the community and the system will be looked at for attracting more staff.
And you said before that you would be able to use some of the CARES Act funding to help bolster the staff. Is that right? Yes,
we can use CARES Act money came to the system in two different ways. One amount of money, about $24 million, came to the system directly to school systems from the federal government. So it flowed directly to us. After June, we received some additional CARES Act money from the state of Maryland that was not designated for schools, but that the state made available for technology and for tutoring programs. And so all of that money has to be used by the end of December, and we've been busy using that to support tutoring efforts and technology acquisition. But that also has freed up some of our local operating budget to use for additional staff as we move into a physical virtual combination, and as we continue to bolster and build out the best possible all virtual program we can.
So thank you, everyone, for joining. As a reminder, we have a Board of Education work session tomorrow, November 17th, and I encourage you all to tune in as we provide the board additional information on our safe return to in-person instruction framework. So thank you so much and have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.